All right, next section. Set up a Cloud9 environment. Okay, so Cloud9 environment. This environment is really just when you want to start building out a solution. When you want to start building out a AWS solution, normally when you want to, say for example, if you want to build a Lambda function, you might start using Cloud9. It's a development environment, kind of like when you're using SQL Workbench and you're writing out SQL code. You're developing a SQL query. Now, when you're building out a kind of a system or a solution, it's more complete or when it comes to AWS, it's more complete where you have to define all your resources. So if you want a Lambda function, you have to define the settings of your Lambda function. If you want a S3 bucket, you have to define those settings. If you want to allow your Lambda function to access the S3 bucket, then you also have to allow, you have to define what permissions are required and needed for Lambda to call that S3 bucket. And so you need all of those to be defined, and then also you need to define the actual application logic. And so Cloud9 is one environment that you can use. So there are other tools. When it comes to developing, well, I generally develop in Python. When I'm developing Python, I can either use Cloud9 if I want a kind of virtualized environment in the cloud and you access everything via the web console or your web browser. Another alternative is using a local application. So you've got local applications like your SQL Workbench, but then you do have things like Athena, which is a web console. So there's those different tools available, and you've got things like PyCharm. PyCharm is a local application. I generally use Visual Studio Code. So it looks something kind of like this. You've got your repository on the left, you've got your code, and you've got a terminal window at the bottom. So that kind of pattern is what a general development environment looks like. So I'll just go through the process of setting up a Cloud9 environment on our development account. Okay, so you just go to RACQ. You have to make sure that you're on the network, and then you go down here, click RACQ AWS. Hopefully you have access to SG Analytics Dev Discovery Analytics. It's the one that ends in 310. And in this environment, it's largely unrestricted at the moment. Then we're going to go over to Cloud9. And you can really just click on the environment or create an environment. I'm just going to use my staff number. Now in this one, you can leave it all standard. You don't really need such a big instance because you're really not doing much processing on this application or this platform. You can leave it as Amazon Linux. Leave the idle. It detects when you're not using the environment and it shuts the machine down for you, so you're not using up any resources and reducing your costs. Just leave all these things. The only thing that needs to be changed is network. So you just need to make sure that your VPC is set to Cloud9. And then when you select the subnet, just make sure you're choosing one that is tagged with Cloud9. Then a good pattern is just to tag these resources with something. Okay, so it's just easier to identify whose environment this is. Okay, and you just click next. There's nothing really there to see, and click create environment. So now what happens in the background is a Amazon Linux virtual machine will be spinning up. If you're familiar, it's an EC2 machine. it's all hidden. You can't actually see the machine if you go to the EC2 web console. But that gets spun up for you. And then it's just a Linux environment and it has a Cloud9 interface. So it's just a web interface for you to interact with the environment. So as it says, it just takes a couple of minutes to boot up. And then for this example, I'll just show you how to, I guess, clone a repository. And then I'll also show you how to start a CDK solution. Okay, so here we've got our directory structure on the left, and at the bottom we've got our environment. Okay, now let's go back to code commit. Let's see if we can bring down a repository. Let's bring down, as in download the sample application. So you go back to your terminal down here at the bottom, and you got git clone, paste in the address, and that will clone a copy of all of the code into your local environment here. And then what you normally need to do next is you need to set it up in such a way that you're working within a virtualized Python environment. So you'd be running python -m venv.venv. Okay, so just to show you the pip list. So pip list is just showing you all the different libraries that are currently installed within your Python environment right now. But let's go and change to our virtual environment. Actually, I believe, here, that's what I need to run. So it's included in the README documentation of this. Okay, so now I've activated my virtual environment. You can see here, I've switched virtual environment. And if I do pip list again, so instead of the list of, looks like 40 or so different libraries, in this Python environment, I've only got 2. And so what I do next is pip install first thing I need to do is change directory to my sample application, pip install, and then that will go ahead and open this file. Then this decides to open up the setup location and it will install each of these libraries in for me. So that's what it's doing at the moment. Okay, so if I run pip list again, now you can see that it has installed a whole bunch of these other libraries that are required for the, I guess, solution that I'm looking at right now. Okay, now let's just close that. And I'll show you the process of setting up a new solution. New terminal. So I've just created a new application or a new directory for a new app. And then it's CDK initialize language. So this is the way that you initialize a new repository or a new solution, especially when it comes to a CDK solution. So what it's done is it's populated your directory full of templated files ready for you to get started building out your new CDK solution. So again, what I went through was your Cloud9 environment. I showed you how to log in. So clicking through the RSCQ portal, RSCQ AWS, selecting the role, then you should see this page. Then you just type in Cloud9 at the top. That will take you to this page. Now, because I've just created a new environment, I'm seeing a page slightly different than the one that I was seeing before. But now I've got my instance. I can, if I had closed it, you can click on this one. And because it hasn't gone through a idle process of automatically shutting down my instance, it was pretty instant and it's booted everything back up. But let's say I had closed it for 60 minutes, I think it's 30 minutes, then the machine will automatically shut down and reduce any costs. Anyway, so then here, then I showed you how to clone your repository. So it was a git clone, and then I went to code commit. I went and copied one of the address locations. Then you just paste it in, just press enter, and it will go away and download a copy of that repository into your Cloud9 environment so you can start developing and making adjustments to that solution. All right. Then lastly, I just showed you the few commands that are needed to start a new CDK solution. So you just run CDK initialize -- language Python, and then that will set up your whole directory with all basic CDK templated files. All right, that's it. Thanks.